Hi there, guys. Welcome to today's episode where we are joined by a very special guest who is going to give us a bit more of an insight as to what it takes to be a more than dentist, let's call it, right? So, not just an associate, but a bit more than that. So, all of those guys out there and girls that are thinking about what does dentistry look like beyond qualifying? Are there routes for people that might have more of a creative mindset? And can you get involved with businesses that might not be even dentistry related? Well, this man that I've got on today is super important in helping you understand this realm. His name is Dr. Sugz, and I've got him right next to me in the studio, sort of abroad, online, so to speak, but it looks like we're next to each other. And the funny story, just for anybody who's listening, we were kind of all the way through this podcast. We were recording it, and then I got an error message, and now we're sitting here re-recording it just for you because we love you guys so much. So, Dr. Sugz, first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to do this twice. But let me hand it over to you if you want to give a quick introduction as to who you are, what your background is, and where you studied and what you're doing now.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me. And it feels weird doing this again, but but yeah, no, I'm Sugz. So I've been an associate dentist for about 6 years now. So I qualified in 2018, and I qualified from King's. And essentially, I've been, practicing in mixed practice for the past 5-6 years, and now transitioning into private practice. And I also run a copywriting agency for healthcare businesses.
Amazing stuff. And we're obviously going to get into copywriting as a whole because, as I said previously to you in more of a private context, that I don't understand how the hell that's got anything to do with dentistry, right? Yeah. And I'm pretty sure anybody listening is probably thinking the exact same thing. But kind of before we get there, because this is a student-centric almost podcast, obviously it's open to everybody, but one key thing I'd like guests to kind of impart is a bit more knowledge as to how their journey was at university and what are the key sort of takeaways, what's the almost life lessons that they learned while they were there, and any tips and tricks they can give, almost in a kind of a summarized fashion that aspiring dentists can take away and obviously learn from. So what would be your kind of summary there?
So, I mean, starting out for me, I think dentistry was never really like natural, if that makes sense. It was never like a easy thing for me to get into. So the first 2 years were kind of challenging because I didn't like learning a lot of the Krebs cycle and the really boring kind of, what is it, biomedical stuff.
Yeah. Preclinical fun.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, preclinical. I just didn't like it, and I was kind of disheartened by the journey that I decided to take. And for a long time, I was figuring out ways that after I qualify, ways that I could kind of transition into something else or do something else. And yeah, I think for me, the big thing was learning how I learn. And what I mean by that is understanding my learning style. So for me, I'm quite a visual learner, and I learn a lot by discussing things with people. So I didn't used to before. So like before I got to uni, I used to just do the same thing everyone else does, which was read a textbook, copy it out again, do past papers, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I gradually got to the point where I was like, actually for me, the way I learn best is getting 2 or 3 people, not necessarily super close mates, but just people I know within uni, and just bouncing ideas off each other, testing each other, talking through topics, teaching each other topics, and then that's the best way to learn what you were saying.
Right, exactly. And then so kind of beyond that, in terms of that's how you maximize learning and ensuring that you're going through it. Was it a steady ride? Because I'm not an A-star student. I'm definitely not 100%, and I struggle with exams. And there's times where I've sort of sat there and just had my head in my hands, thinking I'm definitely not going to pass this one, right? So how do you overcome that? Have you passed through everything? I mean, you said you might have struggled a little bit with just prior to going to uni, but what was it like in uni? And again, what were the lessons there that we can take away to ensure that we're not hit so much by the failures, and how do we get through that?
So I think it's important to understand that you've got to fail along the way. I certainly have failed a lot of times. I failed exams. I failed first year finals. I failed vivas and various little OSCEs and small little exams along the way in dentistry. And even before that, failing A-level exams, and failure has been like a big pattern in my life, and that's the way that I learn, is by getting things wrong and then doing it again and doing it again. That's just the way that I learn, is by getting things wrong. So I think for me, it's quite hard when you fail in dental school. It is really hard because you see your mates. Like, I distinctly remember failing first year, everyone else is going out, getting ready to go out somewhere, blah blah blah, and I'm like, literally, your head's in your hands. You're like, well, I've got to go library, right? I've got to start revising for recess. It's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. But as cliche as it sounds, it does make you like that's what makes your character. Like, I consider myself to be a lot more resilient than a lot of dentists are, because a lot of dentists have never encountered failure. Like, they didn't fail in dental school, they didn't fail in school, straight A's all the way through. And if you've been like that, it means that in your career, which you will inevitably fail at something in your 100%. Career, it will hit you a lot harder than it will hit me. Because for me, it's almost like I feel like I've been through it before, so I know how to deal with it mentally.
Yeah, so you're almost like prepared for it, and you've been there, done that, and obviously that's advantageous, I say, that you are able to cope with the pressure that a lot of people that may have passed through, like you said, so they might have the brain capacity to smash exams, but real life experience, these failures, like you said, build character. So I think anybody listening that might not be the straight A student, you got something that those straight A students may not have, which is, a wealth of experience from getting up time and time again. And that's, as you said quite rightly, the thing that builds character. So I think that's great insight. Kind of moving on from the uni years and then the educational side of things into the world of becoming a fully qualified dentist. So let's, roll it through to when you were, in your first year as being a dentist. Did it kind of feel to you as though I've made it now and this is it? Or was there a sense of this isn't quite what I had expected, and maybe it's not as good as it had felt when I was planning this all the way through? What were your thoughts and your feelings in those first couple of months of being a fully qualified post-foundation year dentist?
Okay, so post-foundation year, I quite enjoyed it, actually, because as we'll probably get onto, I'm quite business-minded anyway. So I think the idea of like being in business, which you are as a dentist, whether you like it or not, unless you choose to work in hospital, you're going to be in business, right? So I quite enjoyed it, but I think the part I found difficult was once I started leveling up and getting better and having to charge big fees, we're talking 4 figures or 5 figures for like really big treatment plans. Yep. Yes, it is nice until
I'm liking this kind of info. Yeah, they just keep it coming.
Well, the thing is, right? I think people almost exaggerate how much dentists actually earn. This is like veering off track a little bit, but
that's fine. Go for it.
People exaggerate how much dentists earn to an extent, right? People think, like, I don't know about you, but I thought, before I even thought dentistry was even a career, I thought you're going to like drive Ferraris, you're going to be on a yacht, have like, it'll be life.
Wait a minute, are you not doing that? No. Nah, you're not doing it. You're not doing it right.
Maybe I'm not doing it right. Exactly. Maybe someone's got the secrets and they haven't told me. Exactly. But I think you can earn a very comfortable living, and I think comparatively to a lot of people in other professions, like I've got mates who do other, things, law, finance, whatever, they might be earning similar, but the amount of work they have to do and the amount of hours they have to do to obtain that is substantially more than what we do, right? We're 9-to-5ers. So that's the best thing, and that's what's facilitated me to be able to even have this business, this copywriting business, is the fact that I finish at 5, so I can get home and I've got a good 6 hours to, and I've not got a family yet. I've not got any major responsibilities or dependents, like any children. So right now I can focus all that time on developing something else, and that's what I recommend a lot of dentists do. Is like, even if you're not business minded, that's fine, but have something that you're something else outside of dentistry that you're focusing your energy on, because otherwise you can become quite one-track minded, and your life can become dentistry. Like dentistry, it really consumes you. So you just have to be conscious of that.
So a very important point. I think before I kind of ask you how you merged maybe your more creative side, or maybe your dreams from when you were younger into what you're doing now with copywriting. I think what we need is kind of a whistle stop tour as to what the hell copywriting even is, right? Because when I think about copywriting, I think of that that circle with the C inside it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, right. So that's all I ever think. You mentioned it a few times. I'm like, I don't get what this guy does. Is he like dealing with products? Are you like looking at different blueprints and patenting things? And I've got no idea whether this fits in a dentistry, whether it doesn't. So it's really, really important for people to know. And I think it's really kind of interesting, if anything, that there might be something outside of dentistry that dentists can still do, but it kind of links. So,
yeah.
Take it away. What is copywriting? And then we'll get into kind of how you got into it.
Yeah, so you're quite right. I thought copywriting was the same thing. I thought it was a legal thing, and it didn't have my interest at all. But I think writing's always been a constant in my life. Like I've always been writing. I was writing music during uni and during school. I was writing stories, poems, and stuff when I was like a little kid. So I always knew that writing was like an innate talent that I had and something that I could do. But I was trying to figure out during lockdown, when obviously we couldn't be practicing dentistry at the time. So I was thinking, well, how can I monetize this writing thing? Like the only way I knew how to monetize writing was writing books, like publishing books, writing stories, right? But I knew that cracking that industry is extremely difficult and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So cool. So I was like, okay, let me figure out ways. And I came across this thing called copywriting. And essentially what copywriting is it's selling things through the written word. So it's how you can persuade someone to take an action based off something that you've written. So the best way to explain it is the Facebook ads that you see, or when you're scrolling on Instagram and you see an ad, or you are opening your email and you see a promotional email from a clothing brand, ASOS or H&M or whatever, that has been written by a copywriter. It's not just, I think a lot of people assume that writing is just generic writing, like someone's just ChatGPT'd it in like 15 minutes and banged it in the caption. It's not quite as simple as that. There's a lot of thought that goes into what you are writing, what emotion you are trying to get out of the reader, and what action that you're looking to get them to take.
Right. And then are your clients kind of giving you the theme behind it as to what message they're trying to portray? Or is it very much a case of you kind of just have to use your expertise to say, this is what's going to work? This is what I think that we should pitch. I mean, is it kind of guided, or is it very much we're paying you, so get the job done? How does it work?
Do you know what? It's really, really a mix of both. So it's a mix of both. So I think a lot of what I do is statistic led. So for example, if I'm writing emails for a company, I'm doing email marketing for them, I need to understand what's worked before, because what I don't want to be doing is coming in, writing a bunch of emails, completely ignoring what's come before, and then I'm just making the same mistakes that they made 2-3 years ago with the same content, right? So I don't want to do that. So instead, what I want to do is, for example, if I'm email marketing for, let's say it's Invisalign, for example, if I was email marketing for them, then what I would want to know is, well, okay, in your past 5 emails, what's been the most successful? What have the most people opened? Because you've got to bear in mind with email marketing, people don't always open emails, right? Like I definitely don't. Right?
Yeah, so
100%. Like a good percentage can sometimes be 60% open rate, which means 60% of people open. Yeah, that's considered good in email marketing terms. Jeez. So yeah, it's quite. I thought it's quite low. I thought I
would have. That's what I was saying. If you're saying that's a good like metric.
Yeah.
That's weird, man. I would have thought it'd be like 90s or something. Would have been.
You would think so. You would think so, but it's not, because you're competing for attention, right? And that's why copywriters are so much. They're in demand, because people. The ultimate commodity right now is attention, right? So people want to get attention. So the best way to get attention is have someone who understands psychology and understands how to get someone's attention through writing. So, and the other thing to factor in is also, I'm not just always writing stuff that you see like letters on a screen. It might also be, for example, I do YouTube scripts sometimes for like YouTube ads. So, you get those skippable 30-second ads on YouTube. Yeah. So sometimes I'll write scripts for those. And that's copywriting too, because you need someone who's, otherwise you're not going to know what to say. So there's loads of facets to it.
Okay. And then like for somebody who's like I don't want to just make it specifically about copywriting. I want to get into a bit more of a broader theme in a minute.
Yeah.
But somebody who is interested in doing the whole copywriting thing, right?
Mm.
Where's a good place to start? Or are you somebody who's, accessible for them to get advice from? Like, how do you operate in that scheme of things? And what was the advice you'd give to maybe a younger aspiring copywriter out there that maybe wants to do it as a side hustle or wants to take it more seriously?
My suggestion would probably be, so where I started by just reading. So there's a couple of books that I would say are like go-tos for anyone
Okay.
who's looking to start copywriting. So one's called Cashvertising, and it's by a guy called Drew Whitman, I think his name is. And there's another one called Adweek Copywriting Handbook. And these are books that were written like 60, 70 years ago. So like a lot of these books are like really old school. So they're talking about like newspapers and how to market, how to write ads in newspapers, which you think is outdated. But the thing is, psychology never changes. It hasn't changed in the
100%.
past,
Yeah.
centuries. It hasn't
Yeah.
changed, right? Humans still operate the same way. So a lot of the lessons that they teach you are the same. You just have to learn how to adapt them into the modern game. So for example, if
Exactly.
they might teach you about psychology with regards to writing a leaflet that gets mailed out to people, but you just need to change that and adapt that to say TikTok. How are you going to do that in 30 seconds, or 20 seconds? So I would suggest firstly, just getting the fundamentals, but don't go too crazy with it. Because sometimes what people will do is they'll buy courses. I really don't recommend that. Because there's a lot of grifters out there. There's a lot of people that basically just want to sell you snake oil. And it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't teach you anything. I think the best way to learn when you start out is free resources. So like free, there's loads of YouTube videos on it and the books that I recommended. In terms of asking me for advice, I'm happy to give people like overarching advice, but honestly, my time is so like between dentistry and copywriting, it's like so tight that like having someone because I had a couple of people that I was like, I guess you could say mentoring, like people who would send me their copy and I would read over it and stuff like that. And I'm happy to do that because it does make me feel good helping someone out, but it's just time is so precious that
of course,
quite hard,
course.
No,
but I think the advice you've given already is almost enough for people at least to get their foot in the door and get into that world, which is, I'll probably say it for everybody. Thank you for kind of providing us with the literature at least to get started and to have a bit more of an insight as to what this industry looks like with copywriting and what's involved in the role in itself. I guess one of the things you mentioned there earlier about how you have to plan things out, right? It's not just as easy as you said, just whack something in and make it look pretty and just good luck, right? But there's a lot more thought behind it. You have to ensure that it meets a certain demographic and a certain plan, right? Yeah. How does that translate to dentistry? I mean, like, is there anything that you've learned maybe from that process or copywriting in general that's helped you with dentistry? Or let's flip it, is there anything in dentistry that you've experienced that's really helped you out in the world of copywriting?
So if we start with copywriting to dentistry and what lessons I've taken from there. So copywriting is, as I said, it's not that much to do with writing. It's about 10% of it is writing, honestly. I do think like 90% of it is the principles, the strategy, communication, understanding psychology, that kind of thing. So that all of that are themes that we encounter as dentists every single day when we're talking to our patients. So understanding persuasion with regards to educating patients on how to change their oral hygiene regime, educating patients on why one treatment option is better for them than another treatment option, and articulating that in a way that they understand. Because what we need to understand as dentists is, and this is a mistake that I think a lot of us make, because we've had so much education, right? 5-6 years of education. We assume everyone has the same knowledge as us. So you'll start saying words like endo and zirconia and
gingivitis. That's a big one. Like, what the hell is that?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Emax onlay. Like, sometimes I will even say to patients like, "Oh, you've got two options. You can either do an onlay or a crown," and they're thinking, "What? I don't even know what either of those words mean." So
which one's cheaper?
Which one's cheap? Well, that's it. That's the problem, right? That's the problem. If you don't, that is a problem that you've exposed there, is that if you aren't explaining things to patients properly, that's exactly what they're going to say to you. They're going to say which one's cheaper, because you're not giving them, they don't see the value in onlay versus crown, because they don't understand destruction of tooth structure and what's more minimally invasive. if they did understand that, look, I'm going to be drilling away more of your tooth with this option, they might be like, oh, I don't care how much it costs. I'd rather you don't do that.
Exactly. Right.
But if you just say, onlay versus like that's the thing in uni. That's what they teach you, right? Patient had tooth extracted. What's the options? Bridge, denture, implant. For every patient, you'd say the same thing.
Yeah.
But 94-year-old Doris is not going to want an implant because she's like, mate, I just need something simple. She might not even want anything. Like a lot of patients will just walk around with gaps, right? So you've got to tailor your options according to the patient that's in front of you. And that's what copywriting taught me, is that. So one of the big lessons that you learn in copywriting is when you're writing a piece of copy or something, you're trying to sell something or something, imagine that you're writing to one person.
Right.
So if I was writing to dentists, I would imagine that I was just writing to you. Like, what do you want? Rather than writing to dentists as a whole, because people want to feel like you're talking to them. They want to feel like there's a personalized message. So that's a big thing that I've learned from copywriting is understanding communications and persuasion. And then the other way around, I'd say actually what dentistry's helped me with the business aspect of copywriting is establishing trust with my clients. I think the big undervalued skill that we have as clinicians is our ability to establish trust really quickly. Like, we establish trust within 1-2 minutes of meeting a patient. You've got a 10-minute checkup, 15-minute checkup. You haven't got long. So for me, establishing relationships with people and making them trust me, it's come a lot easier. And I think that's come with multiple interactions, right? I've seen thousands of patients now, but over that experience, I've learned to deal with different types of patients from different backgrounds, different walks of life. So that's a big advantage when it comes to business.
Brilliant stuff. And I mean, anybody out there who's listening from almost a perspective of how can we get Sugz to work with us, right? Who are they, like the clientele or the people that you pitch to almost to help with? I mean, what's the world that you work in?
So it's predominantly healthcare. And by healthcare, I mean bigger businesses. So it's not necessarily individual medical practices or dental practices or dentists. Copywriting is not as valuable for them. And actually, instead, I tend to work with bigger businesses that are like suppliers, software companies within healthcare, manufacturers, things like that. Those kind of companies are what I tend to work with, because they're the kind of companies that are going to have big email lists of 5,000, 10,000 people, right? A dental practice or a dentist like myself, I haven't got access to that many emails, so it's not going to be valuable to me, right? So that's the kind of companies I work with.
Okay, perfect. And then kind of just to bring it back to more the student realm of things, right? So anybody out there who's either creative or just generally thinking like, oh, that's great, it's good to know that I can do something that's beyond dentistry, still operate in more than one facet and not just be a dentist for the rest of my life. At what point was it that you'd realized that, do you know what, I need to do this, and two, I am capable of doing this? Was it before uni? Was it during it? Was it foundation year, first couple of years of uni? Like when? Because obviously you've said before, right? You were always creative. You were writing music, for example. In your head, was it kind of like, oh, when I'm a dentist, I'm gonna have to pack this all in? I can't follow my love and my desires for creativity? Or were you like, do you know what, I'm gonna find a way to make this work? How did that conversation go internally?
Yeah, I always knew I was going to find a way. Like there was no question about it. One, like when I was studying, I always knew I was not going to work full time as a dentist. Like it's just not happening. Yeah, because for me, in fact, I recommend most dentists don't work full time, but that's a discussion for another day. But I recommend, for me, what has worked so far is working 4 days a week. Now, not anymore, because the business is getting so busy that I literally can't fit the two of them in, which is why I'm cutting down my days currently.
Good to hear.
Yeah, it's good. It is a good thing. But yeah, I think for me, the turning point. So thus far, it's been, I guess you could describe it as a side hustle. I don't even like describing it like that anymore, because it makes it seem like it's just a hobby that I do with my time.
Yeah,
Whereas this is
yeah.
an actual business I'm building, and I'm actually hiring people, and people are getting paid
Wow.
to do stuff. Yeah. So it's not just me anymore. It's other writers that I work with, designers, because I can't do everything myself, right? So if for example, when we talk about kind of expanding the value of what I offer, instead of just saying to businesses, look, I can write you emails, instead I could be like, I'll write you the emails, I'll design the emails so they look nice, and I'll design the website and rewrite the website, and I could do all of that and hire people out and work together with people, right? So yeah, I think that was the turning point for me, was when it started to, people were trusting me to like really deliver for them.
Is that in dentistry, or was that like you'd already kind of put the feelers out with copywriting, and that's when the trust started? Like in what kind of channel are we speaking here? Dentistry or copywriting?
Oh no, I'm talking about copywriting. I
Okay,
think with dentistry, it's I think that just comes with experience, doesn't it? Like I think the more experience you get, the more opportunities come your way, and that kind of thing.
Okay, and then so going back to that point,
yeah,
when was it that you kind of realized, yeah, this is the route, nothing else, and I'm just going to go for it?
I think, to be honest, I don't know if I could say it's like there was like a single switch, like there's a single moment. I think for me, I'm the type of person that if I take an interest in something, I just start going into a rabbit hole, and then I just get obsessed with it. Right, so that's what it was with copywriting. I watched a few YouTube videos, and I was like, okay, and then I started. So the way I actually started, I didn't start working with healthcare companies straight away.
Okay.
The way I started was, there's a site called Upwork. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, it's a bit like Fiverr, right?
Yeah, but it's similar kind of thing. So it's basically where you go, so freelancers, and they could be anything, video editors, web designers, all kinds of people on there. And what you do is you essentially bid for projects. So people will put their projects out there. They'll say, I need someone who's going to write me 5 emails. And they charge, the fees they give you are like really bad, right? Because a lot of the time, the people on there are either beginners or people from kind of lesser developed countries. And, so what they're willing to work for is something that I'm not, right? Especially as a dentist as well. Like, I know how much I can earn doing that. Like, I'm like, why would I? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But that's where I started, because I think that's actually the best way to start. Going back to our question about if someone was to get into copywriting, what's the best way to start? That is how I would start, is doing loads of like cheap projects, even free if you have to, just to get the reps in. That's what you need to do, because you can practice for as long as you want. But the thing is, copywriting it's a results driven business. And if you're not able to deliver results, so if, for example, you've written emails for a company and it's not performing, they're considering you a waste of money, like a waste of their resources. Definitely. So a good training ground is doing that kind of work. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was like a turning point. I think it was just a gradual transition into starting low and then working with bigger companies, and then it's working its way up, really.
And I guess the key takeaway there for anybody listening is that there are routes out there beyond dentistry and alongside dentistry, right? It's not just, you have to do one and not the other. And I guess the good thing about dentistry there that you've mentioned is, you started with 4 days a week. You're down to 3 days a week now, right? Just to confirm.
Yeah. Well, 2 to 3.
Well, wow, it's even better, man. Like,
it's
the fact that you can really almost pursue what you've always wanted to pursue, but you've got something very solid there behind you as well, in being a dentist at the same time. And I think a lot of people do get a bit worried, because they're like, oh, if I become a dentist, I'm screwed. I'm never going to have time. I'm not going to see anyone. Like, it's not medicine. Do you know what I mean? We're not on call. We're not doing like late nights and stuff.
Exactly.
And it really does, if anything, it is one of those careers that actually allows you to pursue the things you probably always wanted to. So anybody who's considering having something more than just dentistry, like following their passion, dentistry is probably one of the only careers that pays well enough for you to kind of afford to do that, right? And allows you the flexibility and time to obviously afford to do that as well. So I guess, like, before we kind of wrap up, one thing that I'm always strong on is understanding how failure affects people, right? And how, you mentioned in your studying side of things, how, you came across some failed attempts at exams and tests and whatnot. But more so as a professional, people really do shy away from it because they always feel like it's going to go on their CV if they discuss their failures, which isn't the case. But it almost helps to make you look more human, and for us as students to realize that, wait a minute, like I might not be that bad a dentist, so, or even a copywriter, so to speak. So what are some, like, maybe you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of what the failures are, but what are the things that you may have experienced in failure? How have you learned from it? And more importantly, how have you overcome it and just got back up and carried on?
So I think with dentistry, I am like literally, I'm failing every day, right? And that's the way I look at it. And it sounds bad, but actually the best way to frame it is that, you know, at the end of the day, we're practicing dentistry. We're not doing dentistry.
Yeah.
I think that's a misnomer. So it's like, what I mean by practicing is, you know, you practice medicine and dentistry in the same way. You're constantly learning, you're iterating on patients, you're learning on experiences that you've had, because end of the day, the stuff that you are taught in textbooks, it's never going to pan out like that in the real world. And you forget that. I think with dentistry, you forget that because you're in the mouth, you forget there's a whole body attached to it.
True.
Like you forget that, you know, and there's a brain attached to it that's processing everything that you're doing, and you know, and can get anxious or panicked or angry and stuff like that. So those are the things. I just went off tangent there, but those are the things that I think are important to focus on. But I think with regards to the failures I've had, I think within dentistry, I mean, I don't mind getting into the nitty gritty. I think it's important for dentists to actually start opening up about this kind of stuff, because we're all seeing this overly glamorized, glossy version of dentistry on Instagram. And that is really like not what dentistry is like.
Yeah.
And people only put their best work up there, including myself. I'm not going to put up stuff that didn't go to plan. So I think failures for me, I wouldn't say I've had anything like catastrophic, but I've had, you know, the same failures that I'm sure a lot of dentists have, you know, overhangs on restorations, and, you know, patients not happy with the color of a crown and having to drill off the crown and devitalizing it, and then having to do the endo on a crown that they didn't like. You know, it's like you encounter all these things, and they're scary at the time. But once the emotion gets kind of sucked out of it, you start to reflect on it. And I think for me, the biggest game changer, and this is what I definitely would advise to any student, newly qualified dentist, even a dentist that's been qualified as long as me, take photos. It's really, really important. Take photos of your work. It doesn't matter if you're just doing a basic composite or you're doing, you know, complex endo, whatever it is. Take photos of your work, because at the end of the day, it doesn't have to go anywhere, right? It can stay on your memory card. But the best way that I tend to reflect is when I've taken a picture of something that I've not done the greatest job on. I can look at it at the end of the day, and I can blow it up on the screen, and I really like dissect it. Like, where did I go wrong here? You know, because for example, when I first started doing composite bonding, what I'd do is I'd take a picture of every single stage. So I put etch on the tooth, take a picture.
Right.
Put bond on the tooth, take a picture. Right. And the reason why I did that, I obviously don't do that anymore because that would just take too long. But the reason why I did that was because I wanted to be able to blow it up and see exactly what it is I did and where did I go wrong or what could I have done better. Because dentistry moves so fast when you're doing procedures, right? You go out and do them in half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. So you don't have time to reflect in that moment, and you can't often remember it very accurately either. So I found that's the biggest game changer for me, is just pictures and reflecting on those failures through that lens.
Okay, and I think I'm probably going to start doing the same thing now. I'm starting pictures of everything I do, clinically speaking. One thing there is kind of when you do have the failure and in hand, and like I said, it's a bit of a mental strain as well, right? You kind of have to reflect and grow from that. What's the key advice there to actually come out of it with a bit of a smile on your face and not just be? I'll give you an example, right? So I play football regularly. If I have 90 minutes where I play the perfect game, I will always reflect like on if I made that one mistake. Let's just say I just made that one thing, right? And it will eat away at me for a week, right? And to this day, I still don't know how to just let it go. Just to say, cool, man, learn from it. Don't do it again. Let's just move on. For someone who's, you know, in a far more accountable position, such as yourself, you know, you got people's, you know, health at stake. obviously you're saying that you make mistakes, you're human at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
do you then deal with that and say, right, let's just, I've learned from it, I've got to put this to bed and not let this eat away at my mind? What's the advice you'd give there? Because obviously I need that advice, right?
Yeah,
Generally,
yeah.
and I'm pretty sure everybody else out there is wanting to hear that.
So I think in the moment, when you're in the moment with patients, you've just had a really bad experience, whatever it is. I think what I tell myself is dentistry is an act. Yeah. So when you're getting to work every day, you are acting. Whatever you've been going through in your life, in your personal life, whatever's gone wrong that morning, you were in traffic, whatever it is, you've got to put that on to a side. And every patient gets an act. They get a
Right.
performance. Yeah. So you can't let the last performance affect the next performance, which is the next patient.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So after every patient, if I've had a really bad experience, I've just got to remember, look, it's the next performance now. It's the next game. We got to switch on.
Yeah.
And often I find that in terms of dealing with the problem, like it's hard during the day, but I find what helps a lot for me is I still have the WhatsApp group of mates that I had back in dental school, and we
Right.
still talk about like stuff that's gone wrong. We ask each other
Mm.
stupid questions because we know that we're mates, right? Like we
You're
all,
not going to get judged. Yeah.
you're not going to get judged. And the thing is, actually, for any students watching this, you probably think, or I thought anyway, when I was a dental student and I looked at like an associate dentist or a principal dentist, I thought this guy must know everything. Like
Yeah.
he must be a genius. I'm telling you, we don't. Like you forget so much stuff from dental school. There's stuff sometimes I'll be like before a procedure, I'll have to reread notes or like watch a video.
YouTube it.
I'll be like,
Yeah.
yeah, literally. Sometimes if I haven't done a procedure and I don't do a lot of endo, for example. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, how do I do an access cavity? Like, what's the shape of this meant to be? Like, sometimes is this that real? Because, once you're out of practice with something and you're not doing it that regularly, you need a bit of a refresher sometimes. So I think it's important to have like-minded people that you can just share ideas with. And one thing which is a bit, I guess, deeper, you could argue, that I do a lot of is journaling.
Okay.
And just writing. Well, it goes hand in hand with what I do, right? But writing out my thoughts, what's gone bad in the day, what you've been grateful for. And for example, if you really want to make it clinical, with dentistry, I've got a mate that does this. He at the end of every day, he picks one case that's gone really well and one case that's gone not so well. Like not necessarily badly, it might just be not so well. And he will dissect each of them. So the one that's gone well, it's important to dissect that too, because why did it go so well? Like, what did you do really well? How can you replicate that, right? So those are the things that I would say are the best ways to kind of progress with failure and like not let it bug at you. Because I get that feeling too. Like sometimes I'll be driving home and my drive to work is about an hour, and driving home and I'm like, it won't leave my mind. No matter what I do, it just won't leave. And I think that's natural human. That's just human nature. Like you just gotta. It will eventually go right. It's just kind of ride with it.
And I'm glad you're saying that, because I guess one thing that I wanted people to kind of take away from this, beyond the business element and the following your passions kind of thing, which you've done so well, is more so the reality that, as much as people kind of look at dentists, and as you quite rightly said, we look at them almost as like oracles and they get nothing wrong, right?
Yeah.
Truth is, we're human, and regardless of what stage we are in that career of dentistry, whether it's still studying for your A levels all the way through, and you're OMFS, and you're looking at different cases every single day across the board, mistakes happen, and we have to have, I guess, that mental fortitude and the people around us, which is a very strong point, which I don't think we mentioned enough, because I think dentistry we look at it as a very solo job. But having the right people around you, whether that's in your staff, whether that's your mates group on WhatsApp, whatever it might be, super important. In the worst case scenario, not in the worst case scenario, but in an additional scenario, I would say that journaling of things and speaking to yourself and venting in a safe space, it's really undervalued in a fast-paced society that we live in today. So kind of alluding back to your point there, I think making use of that is wildly beneficial for everybody. And I think the advice that you're given today would be taken on by everyone, including myself. I'm going to try to do that on a daily basis as well from now on. So yeah, just wanted to kind of wrap it up there. Is there any like sort of final thoughts that you've got, or any last words of wisdom before we call it a day on this one?
To be honest, it's just to any, because I know you probably have a lot of dental students watching this, and I think it's a lot more difficult than people make it out to be. So like, just because, don't let dentists kind of belittle what you do as a dental student. Like a lot of dentists say, "Oh, you haven't experienced real dentistry yet. Like you can't be struggling in dental school." That's not true. Like it's dentistry, yeah, is really hard, but dental school is also really hard. So like, be kind to yourself in that regard. Like it is difficult and it's a slog, but once you get through it, there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, like I said before, with regards to like learning, I think figure out what the best way for you to learn is. Like, don't let someone prescribe the best way to learn to you. Figure that out for yourself and stick with it.
Perfect stuff. And if anybody wanted to kind of follow your journey or see your work or try to connect with you in any way, shape, or form, is there any way that they can do that?
Yeah. So the best way to probably reach out to me is LinkedIn. So Dr. Sugz Maha is probably the best way to reach out to me, because that's like the social media platform I probably use the most. I do have a dental Instagram, but I'm really bad at uploading stuff. Like so I haven't uploaded a case in a while. But you can reach out to me on there as well, which is drmaha.dental.
Cool. And I will leave those in the description box below. But for everybody who has tuned in, I want to say thank you all. I hope you've learned something from this or had some key takeaway. As always, if you can like, subscribe, share this to anybody else that you feel would benefit from it. Leave any of your feedback in the comment section below. And I'll be sure to reply to that when I can. From me and from everybody who is listening, I want to say a massive thanks to Dr. Sugz, who's actually joined us twice now, it seems, because of the first one didn't record properly. So thank you, my friend, for joining. Hopefully this is the start of many, and I'll have you on again in the near future. So thank you once again, mate. And for everybody else watching, cheers and goodbye.